you are. When two people stop reaching out, it feels like everything ends, but in reality, everything begins. When a man and a woman both stop contacting each other, you are, the noise disappears. No explanations, no good mornings, no late night check-ins, just silence. And silence is brutal, not because it hurts, you are, but because it removes distraction. Suddenly, there is nothing to lean on except truth. This is where weak attachment collapses and real character is revealed, you are. This is where most people panic. They mistake quiet for loss. They rush to fill the gap. But the truth is simple. The gap is not empty. It is instructional. You are. Silence forces reflection. It forces accountability. It forces growth, whether someone wants it or not. At first, both feel relief. The pressure is gone. You are. No expectations, no emotional labor, but relief is temporary because after relief comes awareness. The mind starts replaying moments, words not said, you are, effort not matched, energy taken for granted. And here's the key difference. One person uses this awareness to evolve. The other uses it to justify ego. You are. This is where paths split permanently. The one who grows does not chase clarity. They create it internally. They do not beg for answers. They become the answer. You are. They shift focus from why didn't they choose me to how do I choose myself better? And this shift is power, not loud power, quiet, disciplined power. You are. The kind that changes posture, habits, standards, the kind that makes someone magnetic without trying. Meanwhile, the one who avoided effort begins to feel the weight. You are. Because when you lose access to someone who added value, your comfort disappears. And without distraction, the mind exposes what the heart tried to ignore. You are. Regret doesn't come from losing someone. It comes from realizing you mishandled someone. And silence makes that realization unavoidable. You are. Here is the truth most people don't want to hear. Whoever reaches out first is not weak. But whoever needs to reach out is. There is a difference. You are. When you stop contacting someone and your life improves, your confidence grows, your routine tightens, your purpose sharpens, you have already won. Not against them. You are against your old self. And that victory changes everything. Distance doesn't kill connection. Dependency does. When two people stop reaching out, you are. Attraction either resets or dies permanently. If the bond was built on validation, it collapses. If it was built on mutual respect, it survives without effort. You are. This is why silence is the ultimate test. No performance, no persuasion, just true. And here's the uncomfortable reality. The person who focuses on building you are, not waiting, becomes unforgettable. Not because they disappear, but because they rise. People don't miss words, they miss energy, they miss presence. You are. They miss how someone made them feel about themselves. And when you stop giving that away freely, its value becomes clear. If they come back, you are. It's not because you chased, it's because you changed. And if they don't, you didn't lose anything real. You outgrew what couldn't meet you where you were going. You are. Either way, silence worked in your favor. This is why discipline beats desire. This is why focus beats obsession. This is why self-respect outlives chemistry. You are. When contact stops, the strongest move is not reaction, it is direction. Where are you going? Who are you becoming? You are. What standard are you setting now that no one is watching? Because the most powerful moment in any connection is not when two people talk every day. You are. It's when neither does, and one of them still rises. No revenge, no speeches, no closure texts, just growth so undeniable that silence speaks for you. You are. That is what happens next. Silence is not absence, it is a mirror. It reveals who values, who avoids, and who grows. When silence enters a connection, you are. Most people misunderstand it. They think silence means rejection, loss, or failure. But silence is not empty, it is honest. You are. It strips away performance and exposes intention. When words stop, effort becomes visible. When messages disappear, priorities speak. You are. Silence does not confuse strong people. It clarifies them. It shows who was consistent because they cared and who was present only because it was convenient. You are. And this is where growth begins because clarity is power. In silence, the person who was overgiving finally rests. You are. The one who chased validation is forced to face themselves, and the one who relied on attention to feel important suddenly feels the weight of its absence. You are. Silence removes the illusion of closeness and replaces it with truth. If someone valued you, silence doesn't erase that, it amplifies it. You are. If they avoided responsibility, silence exposes that avoidance instantly. You don't need explanations anymore. Behavior has already spoken. You are. The strongest individuals don't fear silence because they don't need noise to feel worthy. They don't scramble to fill the gap with messages, apologies, you are, overthinking. They understand that silence is not a punishment. It is a test. a test of self-respect, a test of emotional discipline. You are. A test of whether you will collapse inward or stand taller when no one is watching. Weak attachment panics in silence. Strong character sharpens. You are. Silence forces reflection. It asks hard questions without mercy. Did you tolerate less than you deserved? Did you ignore red flags to avoid loneliness? You are. Did you give energy where there was no reciprocity? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are necessary because growth never comes from distraction. You are. It comes from confrontation. Silence confronts you with yourself. And if you're brave enough to stay there, you don't come out the same. You are. Here's the shift that changes everything the moment you stop using silence to wait and start using it to build. Build routines. Build standards, build direction. You are. When silence becomes productive instead of painful, you regain control. You stop measuring your worth by response times and start measuring it by your progress. You are. And this is where confidence becomes quiet, unshakable, and deeply attractive. People think silence makes them forgettable. In reality, it does the opposite. You are. What people miss is not constant communication, it's consistent presence. And when that presence disappears, its value becomes undeniable. Silence creates contrast. You are. It reminds people what they no longer have access to. But this only works if silence is backed by growth, not bitterness, not manipulation. Growth. You are. Those who avoid accountability struggle most with silence, because without constant reassurance, they are left alone with the truth of their choices. You are. And regret doesn't come from losing someone. It comes from realizing you mishandled someone who brought value into your life. Silence accelerates that realization. You are. It leaves no room for excuses. Meanwhile, the one who grows becomes unreachable, not physically, but energetically. They no longer chase clarity because they embody it. You are. They no longer ask for effort because they expect it. They don't need to announce boundaries because their behavior enforces them. You are. And this is the quiet power silence gives to those who use it well. Silence teaches patience. It teaches restraint. You are. It teaches you that not every feeling needs expression and not every thought needs validation. You are. It teaches you that peace is louder than chaos and discipline is stronger than desire. And once you learn this, you stop fearing loss. You are. Because you know you can always rebuild yourself. The truth is simple silence doesn't break strong connections. It breaks weak foundations. You are. If something collapses in silence, it was already unstable. And if something survives without constant reassurance, it was real. Either way, silence protects you. You are. It removes what drains you and strengthens what deserves you. So don't rush to fill the quiet. Don't beg for closure. Don't trade your dignity for temporary comfort. You are. Use the mirror silence provides. Look closely, adjust, grow. Because the person who learns to stand firmly in silence becomes impossible to ignore. You are. Not because they demand attention, but because they no longer need it. Silence is not the end. It is the filter. And only those aligned with value, effort, you are, and growth make it through. Detachment exposes truth faster than conversation ever could. Most people believe clarity comes from talking more, explaining more. You are. Asking more questions. But the truth is, words are easy to manipulate. Promises are easy to make. Conversations can delay reality for months, even years. You are. Detachment cuts through all of that. The moment you step back emotionally, behavior becomes undeniable. Effort either remains or it disappears. You are. Interest either deepens or fades. Detachment does not guess, it reveals. When you detach, you stop negotiating your worth. You are. You stop asking someone to show up and start observing whether they do. And this shift is powerful because the moment you remove emotional dependency, you are. You regain authority over your own standards. You're no longer reacting to potential, you're responding to patterns, and patterns never lie. Detachment is not coldness. You are. It is clarity. It is choosing self-respect over emotional chaos. It is understanding that if someone values you, they do not need to be convinced. You are. They don't need repeated conversations. They don't need ultimatums. They show up consistently. Detachment gives them the space to do exactly that. You are, or to expose that they never intended to. Conversations often protect people from accountability. They create room for excuses, misunderstandings, you are, and emotional bargaining. Detachment removes that safety net. There's no arguing with absence. There's no debating inconsistency. When you stop forcing connection, you are, truth steps forward on its own. And that truth may be uncomfortable, but it is freeing. This is why detachment feels scary at first, because it threatens illusion. You are. It threatens hope built on words instead of actions. Many people would rather stay emotionally attached and confused than detached and certain. You are. But certainty is strength. Even when it hurts, it heals faster than confusion ever will. When you detach, you stop chasing reassurance and start building resilience. You are. Your focus shifts from "do they want me?" to "is this aligned with who I am becoming?" And that question changes everything. Because now your energy is no longer leaking into overthinking, waiting, or emotional labor. It is invested inward into growth, discipline, and purpose. Detachment also reveals who relied on your availability. Some people don't miss you, they miss access to you. When you detach, those who benefited without contributing feel the loss first, not because they love deeply, but because comfort is gone. Detachment exposes that difference instantly. Meanwhile, those who truly valued you don't panic, they adjust. They meet you with effort, not excuses. They respond with consistency, not confusion. And this is the gift of detachment. It filters intentions without confrontation. You don't have to accuse. You don't have to explain. You simply observe. The strongest individuals master detachment without bitterness. They don't disappear to manipulate. They detach to protect focus. They understand that energy is currency, and wasting it on uncertainty is expensive. Detachment becomes a boundary, not a weapon. And boundaries don't push the right people away. They reveal them. Here's the reality most people avoid if detachment causes someone to walk away. They were already halfway gone. Detachment doesn't create loss, it exposes it, and exposure is mercy. It saves you time, dignity, and emotional depletion. As you detach, something else happens. Attraction shifts, confidence grows. Your presence becomes intentional, not needy. You stop explaining yourself and start embodying standards. And when you do speak, your words carry weight because they are no longer fueled by fear of loss. Detachment teaches you to be self-sufficient emotionally, to enjoy connection without clinging, to desire without desperation, to care without losing yourself. And once you learn this, you stop trying to convince people of your value. You let them experience it or lose access to it. So don't overtalk. Don't over-explain. Step back and watch. Let detachment do what conversation cannot. Because truth doesn't need to be chased. It emerges the moment you stop holding on. Detachment is not distance. It is discernment. And discernment always leads you forward. The person who uses silence to rebuild power always wins. Emotionally and mentally. Silence is misunderstood because most people only experience it as loss. They feel the quiet and assume something is wrong. They rush to fill it with explanations, messages, or emotion. But silence is not weakness. Used correctly, silence is strategy. It removes distraction, sharpens focus. And returns energy to its rightful owner. The moment you stop reacting and start rebuilding, the balance of power shifts in your favor. When silence enters your life, it gives you two choices. You can sit in anxiety and wait for someone else to decide your emotional state. Or you can use that space to recenter, rediscipline, and redefine your standards. The person who chooses the second path becomes unstoppable because they are no longer dependent on external validation to feel secure. Rebuilding power in silence begins with restraint. Not every feeling needs expression. Not every thought needs to be shared. Emotional discipline is strength. When you stop broadcasting your inner world, you protect it. You stop leaking energy into people who haven't earned access. And that alone creates mental stability. Calm becomes your default instead of chaos. Silence also restores perspective. Without constant interaction, you see patterns clearly. You recognize where effort was one-sided, where boundaries were weak, where you tolerated inconsistency. This awareness is uncomfortable, but it is necessary. Because you cannot rebuild power without honesty. Silence forces that honesty. It strips away fantasy and replaces it with reality. As you rebuild, confidence changes form. It is no longer loud or reactive. It becomes grounded. You stop seeking reassurance and start trusting yourself. Your decisions become deliberate, your presence becomes intentional, and people feel this shift. They may not understand it, but they respect it. Because self-control is rare and rare things are valued. Those who relied on your emotional availability feel the change first. When you stop explaining, chasing, or fixing, the dynamic breaks. Silence removes leverage from those who benefited from your effort without matching it. And this is where power returns to you. Not through confrontation, but through absence of overinvestment. Emotionally, silence heals. It gives your nervous system space to settle. You stop reliving conversations and start creating structure. Routines replace rumination. Purpose replaces obsession. And slowly, your emotional state stabilizes. You are no longer pulled by external triggers. You become self-regulated. That is real emotional strength. Mentally, silence sharpens focus. Without constant emotional noise. Your mind clears. You think better. You plan better. You execute better. You are. You stop wasting cognitive energy on what could be and start investing it in what you control. And control over your own actions is the highest form of power. You are. Silence also teaches patience. You learn that not everything needs an immediate response. That urgency is often fear in disguise. When you wait, you gain information. You are. When you stay quiet, people reveal themselves, and information is leverage. The person who observes calmly always has the advantage over the one who reacts emotionally. You are. Rebuilding power through silence does not mean shutting down or becoming cold. It means choosing depth over noise. It means responding from clarity. You are, not from insecurity. When you finally do speak, your words carry weight because they are no longer fueled by desperation. They are fueled by intention. You are. And here is the truth most people miss. Winning is not about who comes back, apologizes, or validates you. Winning is internal. You are. It is the moment you realize you are no longer controlled by someone else's behavior. It is the moment your peace is no longer negotiable. That is emotional victory. You are. That is mental dominance. If someone returns after your silence, they meet a stronger version of you. If they don't, you lose nothing because you gained yourself. You are. Either outcome is a win because silence didn't take something from you. It gave something back. The person who uses silence to rebuild power does not rush, beg, you are, or explain. They build quietly, consistently. And by the time others notice the change, the transformation is already complete. Silence is not retreat. You are. It is preparation, and preparation always wins. Focus is the comeback. Self-respect is the attraction. When someone stops giving their energy to the wrong people, you are. When they stop chasing validation, that is the beginning of their comeback. Focus is not simply attention, it is discipline. You are. It is the deliberate decision to channel every ounce of energy into growth, purpose, and standards. While others waste time wondering why they weren't prioritized, you are. The person who focuses rebuilds their life with precision. Focus is a weapon, silent, unseen, but unstoppable. It transforms pain into productivity. You are. Heartbreak into strategy and absence into opportunity. The comeback is never loud. It is methodical, calculated, and undeniable. You are. Self-respect is the magnet that draws what aligns with your standards. When you value yourself, when you refuse to compromise your dignity for temporary comfort, you are. People notice, not in words, but in energy. Self-respect doesn't beg. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't chase approval. It signals that you are not disposable. You are. And the energy it creates attracts individuals who match your caliber, those who can meet you where you are, not where you settle to make them comfortable. You are. Self-respect is rare and rarity is irresistible. The person who masters focus and self-respect no longer measures success by attention or affection. You are. They measure it by progress, habits, and personal growth. They don't check their phone to see if someone responded. They check themselves, their discipline. You are. Their routines, their mindset. Every task completed, every goal achieved, every standard upheld is proof that they are moving forward. You are. Independent of others' recognition. And that independence is power. Focus begins with detachment. It is the refusal to let distraction dictate your emotional state. You are. The refusal to let absence feel like rejection. When you concentrate on what you can control, your actions, your goals, your mindset, the comeback becomes inevitable. You are. While others waste energy on confusion, the focused person converts stillness into momentum. They stop reacting to every text, every call, every missed opportunity. You are, and start building their reality. And that construction is magnetic because it is intentional. Self-respect amplifies the effect of focus. When you respect yourself, you are. You do not tolerate inconsistency. You do not beg for attention. You do not dilute your standards for comfort or companionship. People may test your boundaries. You are. But your adherence to them communicates value without a single word. And when someone finally recognizes it, it is not about persuasion. It is about consequence. You are. Those who align with your standards are drawn naturally. Those who do not fall away. This is the invisible power of self-respect. You are. It separates what serves you from what hinders you. Focus reshapes perception. It changes how people see you because your presence now reflects purpose. You are. You are no longer distracted by uncertainty, attachment, or fear of loss. Your energy is centralized, disciplined, and deliberate. You are. Every action demonstrates that your life is moving forward with or without external validation, and that forward motion creates respect. You are. People are attracted not just to your appearance or charm, but to your consistency, your discipline, and your self-command. Self-respect is not arrogance. You are. It is alignment. It is refusing to give what you cannot afford to lose. It is choosing peace over drama, clarity over confusion, and growth over stagnation. You are. And when combined with focus, it becomes irresistible. Focus builds the life. Self-respect filters who belongs in it. Together, you are. They form a force that transforms absence into opportunity and distance into leverage. The comeback is never immediate. It is gradual, invisible, and relentless. You are. While the world chases attachment, the focused person masters detachment. While the world seeks validation, they cultivate worth from within. You are. Every day of disciplined action compounds their strength. Every boundary reinforced, every standard maintained, every step forward builds momentum. You are. By the time anyone notices, the comeback is complete and it is undeniable. People will test your self-respect. They will try to pull you back into old patterns. You are. They will attempt to distract you from your focus. But the comeback thrives on resistance. The more you maintain focus, the stronger your growth becomes. You are. The more you uphold self-respect, the more powerful your presence becomes. And in this combination, victory is inevitable, not over anyone else. You are. But over the version of yourself that once compromised, doubted, or wasted energy on the unworthy. Focus is the engine, self-respect is the fuel. Together, you are. They create momentum that cannot be stopped. They convert silence into strategy, absence into clarity, and pain into power. The comeback is not an apology. You are. It is not a text. It is not chasing validation. It is building a life so aligned, so disciplined, and so magnetic that the world adjusts around it naturally. You are. When focus is your priority, distractions lose value. When self-respect is your standard, only what deserves attention receives it. And when these two forces combine, you become unstoppable. You do not need to explain your growth. You do not need to justify your boundaries. You do not need permission to rise. Focus ensures the rise. You are, and self-respect ensures the ascent is respected. Focus is the comeback. Self-respect is the attraction. Together they guarantee that silence, absence, or distance will no longer weaken you. They will empower you. And when you emerge from this space, you are not just noticed. You are undeniable.